Hello everyone, welcome to SwitchUp. My name is Glen and today we have for you our monthly score roundup of the games we reviewed on the channel last month. Before we get started, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone that left well-wishing comments regarding the recent birth of my son. Apologies for not responding to many of them. I'm sure you can appreciate it's been pretty hectic this last week, but I did read all of them and they are very much appreciated. Thank you very much. Last month was a bit of a quiet month in terms of big releases, but we do have a few review scores to go through for you, so let's get started. The first game then was Super Street Racer, which was reviewed for us by Will, who did a fantastic job. This is an arcade racer which has a decent amount of customization, allowing you to buy a car that's practically scrap and tune it into something half decent in order to win street races. It's arcade fun, quite similar in some respects to games like Burnout, Split Second or Blur for anyone that's played those games in the past, although it was let down by a very high digital price and some visual inconsistencies. If you can find a physical copy for cheap, and it does seem to be a game that is dropping in price quite dramatically in terms of that physical version, then it may be worth half a look, and it scored 74%. The next game was EarthNight, which was reviewed for us by Jace, and is an endless runner which sees you trying to traverse the back of huge dragons, making your way to the head in order to take them down and move on to the next one. Its fast-paced nature was complemented well by a very interesting hand-drawn art style. Add to this a very good chiptune soundtrack and you have what looks like quite an enticing game. Unfortunately, this was marred to some extent by poor performance and the slightly repetitive nature of the gameplay. To be fair, the price was fairly on point, providing they do fix those technical issues, and it scored a SwitchUp score of 77%. The next game then was Call of Juarez Gunslinger, which is a first-person shooter set in the Wild West and was originally on the Xbox 360. Its solid combat and fast-paced and intense action made it an enjoyable experience, although it did become a little repetitive towards the end. The lack of a proper cover mechanic whereby you can lean out of cover and take a few shots meant that the game shows its age a little bit, as this aspect is a little clunky. However, its writing is very good and it tells an interesting story. This scored an overall SwitchUp score of 79%. Coming in at number 6 we had SaGa Scarlet Grace Ambitions, which was a Square Enix release and was reviewed for us by Evan. This RPG had a very interesting combat system, particularly with regards to its united attack, and offered you a lot of content for your money. Again, it did suffer from repetition at times, and its locations could be quite bland, especially the towns, which were effectively just a menu screen. And although the aforementioned content is high, this does depend on you playing back through the game with multiple characters, so how much you get out of the game largely depends on whether you have the stamina to do this. With all that said, the price being asked is very reasonable, and this scored a SwitchUp score of 83%. At number 5 for the month then was another Square Enix release. This one I reviewed myself, and it was Star Ocean First Departure. This is a remaster of the PSP remake of a Super Famicom game, the first in the Star Ocean series. And this remake borrows some elements from the second game in the series and kind of merges them together. Another game with an interesting combat system and a lovely pixel art style, it again certainly offers you value for money in terms of hours of content. I do feel that perhaps there could have been a couple more quality of life features added when you consider that it is a remaster of a remake, but it is a game that holds up very well, and it scored a SwitchUp score of 84%. The next game then was free-to-play game Dauntless, which Mark reviewed for us, although we did play a good 4 or 5 hours of the game together in preparation for the review. This game is essentially a more accessible version of Monster Hunter, and whilst I'm not a big fan of the free-to-play model, I'll give credit where it's due in that there's very little, if any at all, pay to win in this game, with anything you buy being cosmetic, and you can of course choose to completely ignore that and just play the game for free. There were frame rate issues within the hub area of the game, although once you were in an online battle, this wasn't as bad at all, and it scored a SwitchUp score of 85%. Getting into the top 3 for the month then, and in third place we have Ashen. This is a third-person action-adventure game with a minimalistic art style, and it certainly garnered quite a lot of attention when it dropped onto the eShop. This game is a Souls-like experience in every sense of the word, and whilst that particular subgenre is not one that I've experienced very much myself at all, thankfully Mark reviewed this one for us and found this to be very good at what it does. As always with these roundup videos, I will be putting links to every review in the top pinned comment, so if you do want to know more about this game, then please do check out Mark's review. With all that said, Ashen scored a SwitchUp score of 86%. Coming in at number 2 for the month then, we had the Assassin's Creed Rebel Collection, which included Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag as well as its DLC, and Assassin's Creed Rogue. Another game that Mark reviewed for us. This is an extremely solid port of what was already a fantastic game, with all of that extra content thrown in for good measure. There were a few minor visual quirks that let the experience down a touch, most notably jagged edges, but nothing that's going to bother you too much unless you really go looking for it. This scored a SwitchUp score of 87%. And the final game then for the month of December, actually a game I reviewed. I think it's the first time since we've done these review roundup videos that one of my reviews has been the top score for the month, and it's Shovel Knight King of Cards. This was one of the final installments of the Shovel Knight series, seeing you play as King Knight, who possesses quite an interesting moveset, as well as the game possessing all of the visual and audio charm of the previous entries. Whilst you could argue that some of the assets have been reused throughout the games, Yacht Club seem to have refined the formula to a point where the games just seem to get better and better, and in my opinion this was the best of them since the original. With the added inclusion of the Jousters card game, which I expected to be nothing more than a novelty, but it's actually quite addictive, this is a fantastic experience for a very low price point. It was our highest scoring game of the month with a score of 90%. Thank you very much everybody for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do remember to leave a like if you did. Apologies if the audio is a little bit quiet. I'm currently recording this at 3 o'clock in the morning whilst doing the night shift for my 4-day-old son, so I'm sure you can appreciate I don't want to wake him up. A quick thank you to our Patreons as always for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Don't forget, links to these reviews are in the top pinned comment if you want to have a look at them. Take care, Happy New Year and happy gaming.